promoting dialogue.
It's May Day in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Abuja. Good afternoon and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide at wadr.org. Here are the top stories. Senegal's prosecutor announces the arrest of several former state officials for mismanagement of COVID-19 funds between 2020 and 2021.
Nous avons pu entre hier et aujourd'hui.
Between yesterday and today, we were able to register and actually execute bond proposals for the sum of $258 million. Charges are pending and individuals involved who have been taken to the prosecutor's office, so this provisionally set amount could change.
The International Monetary Fund approves the disbursement of over $100 million to Mali for 2024 flood recovery program. Ghanaian government arrests 35 suspects of human trafficking, rescues over 200 victims.
The victims were lured into the country by the suspects ostensibly to give them lucrative jobs in Ghana. Unfortunately, when they came to Ghana, since there are no lucrative jobs existing, then they took them hostages and then they confined them at the Oyerefa estates.
And Nigeria readies for a population count after 20 years as President Tinubu inaugurates a committee on the national census. Details of these stories and more are coming up shortly.
Here is Augustine Coley with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to our listeners within the sub-region and beyond. Newslink begins right here in Senegal with updates from Thursday's press conference by the Attorney General of the Republic and the Attorney General of the Financial and Judicial Division. At the press briefing in Dakar, the senior judicial officials briefed the journalists about the prosecutions initiated following the Court of Auditors report on the mismanagement of COVID-19 funds between 2020 and 2021. The document singles out several former senior officials and ministers under the regime of former President Macky Sall. Sankule Janko reports.
According to the public prosecutor, after reviewing the 8 reports from the Court of Auditors, which implicated several individuals in the management of COVID-19 funds between 2020 and 2021, nearly 30 people have been arrested since the beginning of the week. These senior officials and managers under the former regime were in several ministries responsible for managing COVID-19 funds, including health, sports, mining, culture, youth, and women's affairs. Ibrahim Doy is Senegal's public prosecutor.
Nous avons pu entre hier et aujourd'hui.
Between yesterday and today, we were able to register and actually execute bond proposals for the sum of $258 million. Charges are pending and individuals involved who have been taken to the prosecutor's office will have the same opportunity, so this provisionally set amount could change. Investigations are continuing. These 8 reports are still being analyzed. All responsibilities will be determined. All lines of investigation will be pursued so that we can support the Senegalese people in their efforts to combat the scourge, of course, of economic and financial crime.
The Attorney General added that the former figures implicated in the mismanagement of COVID-19 funds will soon be arrested in turn. Mbake Fall says,
Seule une résolution de mise en accusation de l'Assemblée nationale.
Only a resolution of the National Assembly for the acquisition of information can authorize their appearance before the investigating commission of the Dakar Court of Appeal. And this commission will be like an investigating judge, will investigate the charges and the defense. And if the charges are sufficient, refer them to the High Court of Justice for the trial of these personalities.
As a reminder, the Court of Auditors had implicated several individuals for the mismanagement of funds intended to combat COVID-19 during the immediate past administration of Macky Sall.
That's Sankule Janko reporting there. Let's now take you to the Sahel, where the International Monetary Fund announces the disbursement of approximately $100 million for Mali. This loan, which will be extended over nearly a year, is expected to enable the country to recover from the 2024 flooding situation. The caused deaths, enormous material damages, and the displacement of many people across the country. Here is Christopher Aticho with the details.
On Wednesday, the International Monetary Fund announced that it will immediately provide $129 million to Mali, or just 77 billion CFA francs. The IMF continues that this is an emergency fund to help the country recover from the floods of September and October 2024, which left at least 75 deaths and more than 250,000 homeless. These floods have had significant impact on infrastructure, agriculture, and livelihood. They have compounded existing pressures, including the security crisis and food insecurity. The Global Financial Institutions press release emphasized the IMF Financial Assistance Program will last 11 months. In response to this aid program, the Malian authorities have committed to launching a series of reforms, including strengthening its tax administration and improving state revenues. Bamako must also improve the operation of several public services, including the National Energy Company, EDM. As a reminder, the American president's suspension of the United States Agency for International Development USAID program has affected several African countries, including Mali. Bamako previously benefited from the organization's support in the development and humanitarian sectors.
Christopher Aticho with that report. The Burkinabe government has announced plans to recruit 2,000 non-commissioned officers for the national police. The announcement was made Wednesday by Security Minister Mahamadou Sana, who said the Council of Ministers had adopted a report regarding a request for authorization to recruit members of the national police through direct and professional competitive examinations. Through direct competitions, 2,000 non-commissioned officers will be recruited, including 50 women, into the ranks of the national police. A quota will also be reserved for volunteers for the defense of the fallow land and assistant security volunteers. According to the Minister of Security, his department will also recruit 20 police commissioners and 60 police officers by 2025 through professional competitions. The Burkinabe authorities have repeatedly expressed their willingness to recruit massively to strengthen the army and ensure better coverage of the national security and to confront terrorist groups.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Now, away from the Central Sahel region, Ghana's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, has called for reinforced diplomatic efforts to address the underlying issues that led to the formation of the Alliance of Sahelian states, including Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. These three nations formally withdrew from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, in January 2025, following a series of military coups. The military authorities in Bamako, Ouagadougou, and Niamey opted instead to establish the original bloc, the AES Confederation. From Accra, WADR's Nadia Tete reports.
According to Ghana's Minister for Foreign Affairs, Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, the integration process within West Africa has been significantly hindered by ongoing political and security challenges. He emphasized that addressing these concerns through constructive diplomacy is essential for restoring unity and advancing the vision of a cohesive and stable West Africa.
Recently, the impact of ECOWAS in forging together an integrated regional economic bloc of 15 member states has been somewhat diminished in the face of political and security challenges, which have led to the withdrawal of 3 member states, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso. The 3 member states, as we all know, have since formed the AES, which is the Alliance of Sahelian States.
The minister stressed that while this withdrawal poses a threat to regional cohesion, ECOWAS must reinforce its commitment to diplomacy, enhance security collaboration, and stay resolute in its vision of a united and prosperous West Africa.
It is fair to say that this has been the philosophy underpinning President Mohammed's recent shuttle diplomacy and pragmatic approach in addressing the AES challenge, which, as you all know, has been hailed by his peers and many other observers.
As ECOWAS marks 50 years of existence, the minister believes it presents not just a time for celebration, but a strategic opportunity to reflect, regroup, and chart a bold path for the next 5 decades. One that ensures deeper regional integration, sustained peace, and inclusive growth. For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
Still in Ghana, the Economic and Organized Crime Office, EOCO, has arrested 35 suspected human traffickers in a major operation targeting a syndicate accused of luring and exploiting over 200 individuals. The victims, mostly foreigners and from vulnerable backgrounds, were reportedly housed in Oyarifa in Accra on a false promises of a better life and employment opportunities in Ghana. Acting Executive Director of EOCO, Abdullahi Bashiru Dapila, in a press conference said the suspects operated a well-coordinated trafficking network that preyed on victims from various regions, including neighboring West African countries. Yeritz Dalipa speaking.
The victims were lured into the country by the suspects, ostensibly to give them lucrative jobs in Ghana. Unfortunately, when they came to Ghana, since there are no lucrative jobs existing, then they took them hostages and then they confined them at the Oyarifa estates, and then they were forced to go into cyber crimes and cyber crime related activities. A number of laptops, personal effects, internet facilities, food stuff, and other things were retrieved from them. Together with the Ghana Police Service and then the Army, they were brought to the Economic and Organized Crime Office, and then we have subjected them to some screening. The essence of the screening is to separate the victims from the suspects, to even separate the juveniles from the adults. And then we also want to know what type of criminal activities they are involved in. And whilst the screening was going on, the Nigerian High Commission visited us. At the moment, the screening is still going on. Bearing any unforeseen circumstances, it should be possible for us to link or maybe make arrangements to send the victims back to Nigeria to connect with their relatives.
Abdullahi Bashiru Dapila is the Executive Director of the Economic and Organized Crime Office in Ghana. Elsewhere, the federal government of Nigeria has taken a significant step towards conducting its long-awaited population and housing census nearly 2 decades after the last count in 2006. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu inaugurated the high-level committee Wednesday and tasked it with laying the groundwork for the national exercise. WADR's Usma Umar has more from Abuja.
You are expected to work with all relevant agencies. I'm glad NIMSI is here, NPC, and of course the Ministry of Budget and Planning. His ministry has to take charge of this because you cannot budget and you cannot plan.
President Tinubu, represented by his Chief of Staff, Femi Gbajabiamila, on Wednesday, inaugurated an 8-member presidential committee to spearhead preparations for Nigeria's next population and housing census. With the interim report due in 3 weeks, the committee's work will set the timeline and terms for the first enumeration since 2006, a gap the president describes as unacceptable in a rapidly changing society. The president directed the committee to explore both domestic and international funding options, emphasizing that the entire census operation must be driven by digital technology, including biometric capture and real-time data processing.
If you do not know how many you are, we expect that we will have potential international support, and we expect that you will touch on the areas of technology because the census has to be technology driven. Things have changed from the last time that we conducted this exercise.
Senator Atiku Bagudu, who chairs the committee, pledged to deliver actionable recommendations, underscoring that accurate data is critical to navigating Nigeria's economic recovery.
We are under no illusion that what we are also required to do as a committee is in a similar state. We shouldn't lament. We should reflect on all the resources available to government and mobilize and provide advice what can be done, who can bring resources to bear, and I'm sure we'll find the wherewithal
Other committee members include the Minister of Information, the Chairman of the National Population Commission, and the Director General of the National Identity Management Commission. The last census in 2006 put Nigeria's population at over 140 million. Nearly 20 years later, the country's growth and its planning needs have only intensified. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Senegal's prosecutor announces the arrest of several former state officials for mismanagement of COVID-19 funds between 2020 and 2021. International Monetary Fund approves the disbursement of over $100 million to Mali for 2024 flood recovery program. Ghanaian government arrests 35 suspects of human trafficking, rescues over 200 victims. Still ahead, in Cote d'Ivoire, opposition PDCR elects Tidjane Thiam as its candidate for the October 2025 presidential election. We also have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
We are streaming live on YouTube at WADR News and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Let's now take you to Cote d'Ivoire, where Tidjane Thiam was elected president of the Democratic Party of Cote d'Ivoire, PDCR, months before the presidential election. This follows the party's convention on Wednesday, at which nearly 6,000 activists were invited to vote. Francis Boniface completes the story.
Tidjane Thiam, at the PDCI convention held on Wednesday, ultimately emerged as the only candidate. After the vote count, he received 99.50%. He was therefore elected as the Democratic Party of Cote d'Ivoire's candidate for the presidential election next October. According to provisional overall results, the turnout was just over 93%. Former Minister of Commerce Jean-Louis Billon, a PDCI official who is challenging Tidjane Thiam, ultimately did not enter the fray. He denounced the organization of the convention. In a recent statement, he also called for dialogue to find a candidate who will command unanimous support from the party, thus ensuring PDCI's victory in the next presidential election. After being elected as the party's candidate, Tidjane Thiam will now have to resolve the debate over his nationality, which could weaken his presidential bid. He was reportedly recently denied an Ivorian nationality certificate by the Ivorian courts despite having recently renounced his French nationality. This has been confirmed by the French government, which had also published it in its official gazette. Those close to Tidjane Thiam welcomed his election, reiterating that he is indeed Ivorian and that his candidacy is serious for the future of Cote d'Ivoire.
Francis Boniface reporting there. Elsewhere, a Liberian-American, Otello Bruce, faces extradition to the United States for sexually abusing his daughter. The ongoing extradition proceedings in Monrovia have captured the attention of both local and international observers, highlighting concerns about child protection. From Monrovia, Ibrahim Parker reports.
Testimony revealed that Otello Bruce's sister sexually abused his daughter while residing in the United States on conditions that should have ensured her safety and well-being. The prosecution's case is based on a series of charges, including multiple counts of aggravated statutory rape and indecent assault. The case dates to a period between December 2010 and March 2012 when the accused fled the United States, supposedly evading prosecution. A grand jury had indicted Bruce on 12 counts of sexual misconduct. The Solicitor General of Liberia, Councillor Augustine Fayard, agreed to Bruce's extradition for his alleged crimes against a minor, citing the U.S. Liberia 1937 extradition treaty. In contrast, Bruce's defense attorney, Councillor James Kuhlman, argued that the extradition treaty had been effectively notified since 1939. the case, suspended until April 21, 2025, remains a focal point of national discourse on how best to navigate the challenges of extradition and international law. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is a guest.
Our guest this afternoon is Ibrahima Khan, an AU governance expert. He speaks about Senegal's judicial officer's announcement of the arrest of some former senior officials for gross mismanagement of the COVID-19 funds.
It's not even a new issue, because when a report was released a few years ago, it already mentioned the issue of mismanagement in particular ministries of part of the 1,000 billion CFA allocated by the state to deal with the COVID issue. So it's because maybe the former regime didn't take the necessary action against those who stole the money, that this new government is using it as a strategy in a particular moment of its action to recover the resources. As you know, Senegal is dealing with a lot of cash issues, so they want to use this process maybe to get some cash from the people who have stolen public money.
Since the Jomai Faye's government came to power, the issue of accountability has been more portrayed as compared to other aspects of its agenda. How would you describe the capacity of the judiciary in terms of prosecuting these series of cases that are coming to ensure its independence and not to be sentimental?
Well, it's a big concern. Nobody is disputing, the necessity for the state to ask civil servants in particular to account for the use of public resources. Nobody disputing that. And it's really important in a country like Senegal, where in the past we faced a lot of scandals about the mismanagement of state resources, that something needs to be done. But my problem is the capacity of our judiciary to deal with the issue. So far, Senegal has less than 550 judges for the whole country and for the whole judicial system, and approximately 500 lawyers in the country. So if you look at that number and look at the fact that already our prisons are overcrowded because of people who cannot be tried in a normal circumstances. So you add just for this issue, because yesterday the prosecutor was talking about more than 320 people who will be arrested for this issue. You ask yourself when our judiciary will be able to organize all these trials in a very acceptable time frame.
How would you also describe the focus of the government in terms of going after past officials of Macky Sall's government instead of focusing on the current challenges, or in terms of bettering the lives of the Senegalese people for which they were voted?
Well, it's a political strategy. This didn't start today. If you recall, the last 3 years, the former ruling party's strategy was to do everything to destroy PASTEF. PASTEF agenda is also to do everything to destroy the former ruling party. Most of the ministers who will be on trial very soon come from that political party. So at least if they cannot, in their political strategy, if they cannot destroy the that political party APR, they will do everything to really make sure that it will not be a party that will be on the political scene very strong for them. So that's a political strategy. are they going to succeed or not? That's an issue that you will see.
Dr. Ibrahim Makan is an AU governance expert. And now Sankule Janko joins me in studio with the latest sports news. Hello, Sankule.
Hello, Augustine.
Well, the most talked about game in football is Manchester United coming back in the Europa League quarterfinals last evening. But before that, CAF has sanctioned some clubs in Africa. Tell us more about that.
Yes, absolutely. You're right. The Confederation of African Football indeed has fined some clubs. Let's begin with ASFA of Morocco, because the disciplinary committee of CAF charged this particular football club for failing to, provide adequate security during their CAF Champions League game against Pyramid, and they have been fined $20,000. The Confederation Disciplinary Board also fined, they found Mamelodi Sundowns, Esperance Tunis of Tunisia, because of their game against, Mamelodi Sundowns of South Africa. The same thing for inappropriate and misbehavior. Because of that, they've been found for $150,000, dollars fine. That's quite a lot. But then, talking about Manchester United, for elderly people, I'm sure they remember 1999, but for some of us who are young, we only watch the videos. But yesterday in Old Trafford, oh boy, Harry Maguire was the hero, because he scored a 9-minute goal for Manchester United. Interesting. It was a very interesting game, I'll tell you. Augustine. So Manchester United were leading 2-0 in the first half, in the quarterfinals. In the second half, French side Lyon equalized 2-2. The game went to extra time because there must be a winner. And during the course of the extra time, Lyon went a man down because they were given a red card.
Yeah.
So they have a man less. But interestingly, during the course of the extra time, they scored 2 more goals. So it was 4-2 in the tie. In the second half of the extra time, when the game was just a few minutes to go, somehow, Manchester United scored 3 goals.
Now, how would you describe Maguire's goal? Can we say the rejected stone has now become the cornerstone?
Absolutely. In fact, that's the right description there, because, Harry Maguire has enjoyed a lot of things in Manchester United. His career has not been one of the best. He's been criticized. You remember even a Ghanaian, a parliamentarian, describing former finance minister as a Maguire, because that's how bad his time in Manchester United has been. But yesterday, he was the hero. Everybody is talking about him, and it's been an incredible game of football, because no one actually saw that coming. But for the highlight of that game, Augustine, I'll tell you, he's a young fan. When Lyon scored 4, United were 2, he was crying. He was crying bitterly. 2 minutes later, he was over the moon. He was so happy.
But the tears were still rolling down.
Tears were
At that moment, those were tears of joy.
At that point in time, yes. Tears of joy.
Thank you, Sankule Janko, with the latest in the world of sports. With that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and a special thanks to Mustafa Sek and Umundayogo for the technical support. To interact with us via our social media platforms, X, Instagram at WADR English, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. I am Augustine Curley. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango,